we came up with that idea that if we would now give the patient a treatment, every visit in the trial would have to be paid, because the local insurances in Germany say if the standard of care is no treatment and now the patient has to come every second week to get a treatment, the insurers will not pay that. They will say no. And I understand that, but all of a sudden you need to think about that budget and need to calculate that budget into your trial budget.
Welcome to EHA Unplugged, the official podcast channel of the European Hematology Association, EHA. I'm your host, Isabel Olivera. Today we are joined by Professor Elias May, a consultant hematologist and PI at the Department of Internal Medicine 5 and German-speaking myeloma multicenter group at the Heidelberg University Hospital in Germany. Professor May is a former scholar of EHA's Clinical Research Training in Hematology program, CRTH. So we have invited him to learn about his experience in CRTH and how it has helped him in his clinical research career. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation.
How did you first learn about CRTH and what made you decide to apply?
So from early on, I was involved in the clinical trials in multiple myeloma in the Department of Internal Medicine 5 in Heidelberg. And after a few years, one of my current mentors approached me and said, well, Elias, if you want to get more involved into clinical trials, you should build all the knowledge around that. And look, here's a program you can apply for. So I decided, well, that looks quite good. And I looked into the application process and found out that it was actually pretty easy to apply, because all you had to do was having a good idea for a clinical trial in the area you're working on and describe what experience you have already made in the conduct of clinical trials or in treating patients. So for me, it was quite clear that I should apply for that program.
And how did CRTH help you develop your clinical trial proposal?
It helped me a lot in many, many ways. So CRTH for me, now when I look back at 2022, when I was in the program, I would say it really helped me because I met a lot of people there who were in the same situation as I was. So they were all young people who were interested in conducting clinical trials, but it was difficult for them to establish their own trials in the institutions, to develop the right protocols and address all the questions around budget planning, around statistics. And actually, it helped me in that way that we had excellent mentors who really taught us what to do and how to approach all these questions. And on the other hand, it gave me a network of peers, of people that are really around my age in the same career stage, that really struggle with the same questions and the same topics. And it really helped me to extend my network beyond the campus I was working on and into a more international and more diverse field. So I did not just meet up with myeloma people, but I also met up with people who were, for example, there was one colleague, she was working on childhood acute leukemia. So it was a completely different setup, but it was so interesting to listen to her and to learn.
What is the particular aspect of CRTH that helped you the most? Networking, or is there something else?
Networking was a key aspect with the peers, but also with the mentors. So today I'm still in good contact with many of my mentors. So when I see them at the ASH conference or at the EHA conference, I always text them and we meet up for a coffee and we discuss the recent developments and ideas. And so I think networking was really absolutely crucial.
And it has continued, as you say. So you met there, but you keep in contact also with your cohort?
Absolutely. So we still have like a own group, own WhatsApp group, and everyone is in there, the mentors and actually the scholars. So you can really see every time we meet at one of those major conferences, you can see that we make appointments, we meet for dinner, and we try to catch up for coffee, but we also send around pictures from others who are giving talks or having nice presentations. So it's really that we cheer each other, and it is still growing. From there, the network still continues to grow. And for me, it was really, when I look back now, more than 3 years ago, I would say it really changed my career. It was really a game changer.
To what extent did it help you in the technical aspects of clinical trial design, or to improve your project?
Yeah. I think when I remember back in 2022, I had a trial design for smoldering myeloma, which is already an entity that is hard to treat because usually you don't treat it. So I came there and I was very convinced that we should treat smoldering myeloma with a novel bispecific antibody. And then all of a sudden, the statistician at that time, who was my mentor, came up and said, well, did you plan about the number of patients that you need, and how do you derive that number? And I never thought of it, and there was no data. And he said, well, if there is no data, you have to generate that data first, but you cannot make an hypothesis and hypothesize that whatever number of patients will be MRD negative or have a good response. So he really challenged me, and that gave me a lot of stuff to think of, and I began to search in the literature in a different way. And then we had homework to do. So I had to do a budget plan for the trial, and I never did that before, and that was really a tough work. It was from the other mentor. She was a very experienced trial coordinator, and I came up with a budget, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. Yeah. And then she said, yeah, but well, Elias, did you calculate for patients that need to be redosed? Did you calculate for patients that need additional treatment for side effects? Did you calculate for the staff in the pharmacies? And I said, no. And all of a sudden, I really learned a lot. And what was also important for me to get more insights into the ethics. So we had a very, very a good professor from the Netherlands. She was an ethics expert, and we discussed a lot about ethics in clinical trials and when to stop trials, and that safety is really always paramount to everything that we do. And this really helped me to elaborate, to develop the tools that I'm working on today as a clinical trialist. And it really changed my whole view on conducting clinical trials.
So which skills do you think are more important for hematologists to learn to start a clinical trial?
It's a tough question because there are a lot of skills that you have to know of and that you have to be aware of in a basic sense. You have to have basic skills in many areas. So first, I would say, of course, you have to, as a clinician, you have to be experienced and know a lot about side effects, interactions, and the immune therapies or treatments that you're using. So you really have a hands-on experience. And in that way, I would say it is important that you have really a strong clinical background. And on the other hand, you also have to have good writing skills, good reading skills, and know how to read and approach the literature to get the information that you want and to also critically look at this information. And then you have other pieces that are important, like the statistics. I'm not a statistician, and many times I'm asking the statisticians and my mentor as well, my statistic mentor I got to know at CRTH. I ask him simple questions. I say, I don't understand. How do you do that? But still, in the end, you have to have an idea. What does it mean if you increase the alpha, or if you do an interim analysis and you have alpha spending, which means that you lose some of your power if you look earlier into an endpoint. So all that is also a skill that you only learn that by critically looking into the literature and see how other people did that. So we have a current trial that we are starting at the GMMG in Heidelberg. And that trial design was basically inspired, just to give you an example, of the statistics of an Italian trial that has been published 5 years ago. And when we initially discussed our trial design, I had this idea and said, well, let's look into that Italian trial and how they did it, how they did a 3-arm trial design with a stopping rule. And we came up with that and said, let's do it in a similar way. Of course, we did it a bit different. So that is another skill that you need to have. And also that skill with regards to budget planning, right? So you have to have an idea that every step that you're doing and every hour that you're spending needs to be at least partially be reimbursed, right? So I cannot tell the statistician to do work or the project manager to do work without paying him or her. Yeah. So, And also with the diagnostics, you really have to be careful. For example, when I started my trial wanted to start my smoldering myeloma trial in 2022, treatment was not allowed in myeloma for smoldering myeloma in Germany. And we came up with that idea that if we would now give the patient a treatment, every visit in the trial would have to be paid, because the local insurances in Germany say if the standard of care is no treatment and now the patient has to come every second week to get a treatment, the insurers will not pay that. They will say no. And I understand that, but all of a sudden you need to think about that budget and need to calculate that budget into your trial budget. So it's a bit of everything, and you need a lot of experience on the one hand, but on the other hand, you just need to start doing things, You cannot learn all of the skills all together, but CRTH was something that really drove this learning curve. So it really helped me to get more insight into each of these skills and to get an idea and say, okay, I just start and write a proposal and discuss with a company, discuss the budget and so on.
Yes, you have to learn about so many domains that you have to learn on the job for many of them, I guess, and by doing it. But CRTH gives you a start on the different domains, at least, that you have to consider.
I think that's very well summarized. So it gives you a start, it gives you more insights, and it gives you the network of peers and the network of mentors. So after this year, you really have the feeling, okay, people are struggling with the same situation, and some of your mentors then very well, because you spend a lot of time with them and you have the feeling, okay, I can approach them and ask them next year, if I have another trial proposal, I just reach out at a conference and say, do you have 10 minutes time? I want to show you my proposal. And that's what I actually did now many times. Also with the trial that I'm leading now, it was not a trial that I developed at EHA CRTH. So it's a maintenance trial in multiple myeloma. It's something different. But actually, when we approached the health authorities, they wanted more information on the drugs that we are using. So I approached one of my former CRTH mentors by phone, and I said, well, do you have an idea how can I solve this question? And he said, well, send me the question that they asked via email. And I sent it to him, and we had a 20-minute phone call, and we solved the problem, It was fantastic. And in my institution, we also had ideas, but it was really nice to have that backup and that additional idea, to really get a good answer for the authorities and implement the right measures into that trial.
I'm thinking from a doctor's point of view that has never been involved in a clinical trial. It sounds like a lot of hassle.
It's frustrating sometimes.
Why do you feel the drive? Why are you motivated to get into this? Because it is challenging. Why not just practice in your normal?
I think that's a very good question. So I think I feel the drive because it's a sort of research that can directly improve the life of patients. I agree with you. It's the same as if I would just be in clinical practice without doing any clinical trials. But doing clinical trials gives you on the back end the possibility to change the life of many, many people, while having already improved the lives of the patients that you treated in the trial. So I think this opportunity really encourages me to continue my work.
Remember you told me that the CRTH plan that you wrote didn't get funded at the end of the day.
Right.
But I thought it very interesting that even if that one that you developed during CRTH didn't get funded, you have been involved since then in clinical trials. Somehow, why didn't that one get funded specifically? And then what have you been involved in since then? Which are these other clinical trials?
I would put it in a good way. So I would say the concept was too visionary in 2022. Last year, a similar trial started that got funded from another colleague that I like a lot. So I would definitely say I was maybe a bit too early, and I should have tried it maybe again and again over the years. So I got involved in our major trials that we are doing with the German study groups. And here really my two mentors in Heidelberg and also the colleagues outside of Heidelberg really helped me to get my own maintenance trial running, and which is a large randomized phase 3 trial, and which is also very interesting because there we offer patients a new immunotherapy that is not available as of now as maintenance treatment. And we also have a limited duration of therapy, which I think is becoming more and more important and is another visionary aspect of my work, that I would say, if we have such good treatments, why are we treating myeloma patients forever? Makes no sense from a quality of life point of view, from a cost point of view, from a toxicity point of view. So that is also a trial where I could translate a lot of my ideas into the trial design. So I'm pretty happy with that as well.
For the audience, I would say do not despair. If one of the projects doesn't get funded, keep going.
So Adele Fielding, who was the course director in 2022, she said, well, you have to be persistent, right? So you just have to try and go your way.
So what would you recommend to a hematologist that is thinking of getting involved in clinical trials and doesn't know really well how to do it and where to start?
I would say stop thinking, start doing. The first thing that I did is that in my department, I started to treat patients on clinical trials and to include patients in clinical trials, and really to approach my mentors over and over again and say, I'm interested, I want to learn more. So next time you are planning a trial, please involve me in the trial design, or please, I have a question here. We have done, so that was one of the starting points with my mentors back in 2013. I approached them and said, well, if you have that nice trial data, I would have so many exploratory questions. So can I please answer based on the trials that have been done without my help? But can I answer some of these questions, and then approach a statistician and say, well, can you help me? How can we do that together? And so just stop thinking about it, but just get your ideas and then start walking and doing things.
And apply to CRTH.
And apply to CRTH, exactly. It was easy.
Is it difficult to get in?
So I had an idea for a smoldering trial, so I developed that a little bit. I would say it of course, took me some time to develop that. But then at that time, and I don't know if it's still the same way today, you also had to write something about the experience that you already had with clinical trials and treating patients in clinical trials. And of course, you had to send a simple CV, something like that. But that was not a lot of work.
Is there anything else you would like to tell the audience about your experience leading clinical trials?
So I would say, don't worry, go your way. And we need young colleagues that are interested in clinical trials. And I think it's a very, very good way to do research in hematology and in oncology, because you directly treat patients, but you also have like a bigger picture. You have a trial with a primary endpoint and with a clear goal, and that is often a goal that can change the practice or the understanding of the disease or how we treat the disease. So I think if you're interested, just go ahead and start thinking and doing things. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Professor May, for being with us today for this lively conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to the audience for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more episodes of EHA Unplugged.